Ashbourne Mill, midnight patrol. The scream cuts through the hedgerow like a blade. It's not human, not quite, but it wears the shape of one. Mercer's boots slip in the mud as he staggers backward, torch swinging wildly across the stone wall. The beam catches movement, something tall, hunched, pale as bone, folding itself into the black mouth of the mill's upper window. Glass cracks. A flake of brick tumbles. He fumbles for his radio. Static. No signal. The torch flickers once, then dies. The sound comes again, closer this time. A wet clicking, like teeth behind a wooden mask. Mercer's breath clouds the air in front of him. Every instinct screams, run. But his legs won't move. Not until the figure drops. Not until it lands hard in the yard, with a sound like meat hitting slate. 6 hours earlier, the worst thing Mercer expected was a fox in someone's bins. The Delbridge night shift was never glamorous. Most calls were noise complaints or bored teens daring each other to scale the scaffolding behind the co-op. The streets were quiet, the pubs long closed, and the only light came from the yellowed lamps lining Bridge Lane and the occasional flicker of a telly through half-drawn curtains. Inside the station, the strip lights buzzed faintly. Mercer stood at the notice board, sipping burnt coffee from a chipped mug, his eyes fixed on the faded clipping near the top corner. The photo had bleached to near monochrome, just the outline of a girl's face, young, maybe 8. The name was still legible. Sophie Hargreaves, missing since 2003, last seen near Ashbourne Mill. Someone had scrawled a date across the bottom in red biro. Mercer didn't recognize the handwriting. He stared at it longer than he meant to. The guilt sat low in his stomach, indistinct but constant, like a bruise you forget until something presses on it. The radio on his belt crackled. "Control to PC Mercer, come in." He pressed the button. "Mercer, go ahead." "Dan, we've had a report of movement at Ashbourne Mill. Old place on the edge of town. Caller didn't leave a name, just said there were lights and odd noises. Could be squatters." Mercer exhaled slowly through his nose. "Copy that. Heading there now." He clipped the radio back and drained the mug. The coffee had gone cold and bitter. Outside, the air was sharp and still. No wind, no birds. Even the sheep in the lower pastures were silent. Mercer drove with the window cracked, more out of habit than need. The hedgerows loomed high on either side of the lane, their winter bare branches clawing at the sky. The mill came into view like a shadow that had always been there, its 4-story bulk rising above the trees, slate roof broken in places. The great wheel long rusted still. The gravel crunched under his tires as he pulled up beside the old gate. He left the engine running. The building looked dead. No lights, no movement. But something about it felt alert. He stepped out, hand resting on the torch at his belt. No weapon, just standard patrol kit. He was alone, and Control hadn't flagged the call as a risk. Still, his gut pulled tight. The gate had half rotted off its hinges. Beyond it, the yard was littered with damp leaves and broken slate. Mercer swept the torch across the ground. Footprints, deep ones, oddly spaced, as if whoever or whatever made them had moved with long, dragging strides. The impressions were wide, the heels sunk hard into the soil, but the toe prints were faint. No tread pattern. Barefoot? He crouched, tracing the edge of one with his gloved finger. The soil was soft from last week's rain. These weren't old. A faint sound stirred above him, a groan of warped timber. He rose and turned the beam upward. The mill's clock tower loomed above, its hands frozen at 1 minute past midnight. The glass was cracked. Behind it, Just for a moment, something moved. He caught a flash, shoulder maybe hunched, a pale blur behind the shattered pane. "Hello?" His voice came out too thin. He cleared his throat and tried again, louder. "Police! If anyone's inside, come out now." Nothing. He circled the building slowly, boots crunching over grit and broken glass. The beam of his torch caught rusted signage, old cables, and at the northern corner, a half-buried object just beside a moss-covered gatepost. He knelt. It was a child's boot. Small, muddy, the leather cracked, pink laces, mostly rotted. He turned it over in his hand. A name had once been written inside, but the ink was long gone. Mercer stood, pocketed the boot, and stepped back toward the cruiser. His breath came faster now. His skin felt too tight. This wasn't just trespassers. He reached for the radio. "Control, this is PC Mercer. I've got signs of recent activity at Ashbourne Mill. Possible intruder, requesting backup." A pause, then, "Received, Dan. Closest unit is Wilson and Grant. ETA 20 minutes. Sit tight. Do not engage." He clicked off and sat in the driver's seat, leaving the door open. From the upper window, something watched him. He didn't see it move, didn't hear glass shift. But when he looked back, the shape was gone. Ashbourne Mill, midnight patrol. The backup cruiser's headlights carved twin beams through the hedgerow tunnel as it pulled in behind Mercer's. Gravel crunched under tires. He stepped out, nodding once as Laura Wilson emerged from the passenger side, zipping her jacket higher against the cold. Mark Grant unfolded from the driver's seat with a grunt, torch already in hand. "Still standing then," Mark said, giving the mill a skeptical glance. "No banshee attacks?" Mercer didn't smile. "Something's up there. Saw movement in the tower. Footprints, too. Bare, wide, deep. And this." He reached into his pocket and handed Laura the child's boot. She turned it over slowly, brow furrowing. "How long's this been here?" "No idea. Half buried. But it's not rotted through. Laces are mostly gone, but the stitching's intact." Mark leaned in. "Could be dumped. Fox might have dragged it from somewhere." Mercer shook his head. "Too neat. It was tucked beside the gatepost like someone placed it." Laura handed it back. "All right, let's sweep the perimeter. Stay close. No heroics." They moved in a slow arc around the building, torches cutting through the dark. The mill loomed above, its brickwork black with damp, old ivy threading through the cracked mortar. No owls, no rustle of hedgerow life, just the scuff of boots and the occasional static click of their radios. "Control, this is PC Wilson," Laura said quietly into hers. "We're at Ashbourne Mill with Mercer. No contact yet. Beginning external sweep." "Received," came the reply. "Be advised. Armed response still 2 hours out. Maintain distance. Do not enter the building." Mark muttered, "Because that always works." Laura gave him a look. "We do this by the book. Control's clear." Mercer didn't answer. He led them to the north side where he'd found the boot. His torch beam slid over the mossy ground and caught on something new. "Here," he said. Near the base of the mill wall, scratched into the weather-stained bricks, were a series of crude marks, angular, jagged. Not letters, not symbols he recognized, but repeated, over and over in the same rough shape, like someone had etched it again and again with increasing pressure. Some lines were shallow, others dug in deep. Mark crouched. "Bloody hell. That's not graffiti." "Looks like someone lost patience halfway through," Laura said, tracing the groove with a finger. "I've seen something like this before. Years back near the old rail bridge at Delbridge. Local kids were mimicking something, some urban legend thing. Can't remember what they called it." Mercer didn't respond. He was staring at the symbols, but his mind was elsewhere. The missing person clipping on the station board. A girl gone 10 years. No leads, no resolution, just a photo with a school badge and a date. The boot. It had pink laces. Laura rose. No sign of forced entry. Windows are too high. You said you saw movement? Top window, Mercer said. Clock tower, just a blur. Mark swept his torch upward. Nothing now. Let's check the yard again, Laura said. See if we missed anything. They moved toward the rear, where broken slate and damp leaves blanketed the ground. The torchlight flickered over rusted chains, a collapsed fence, and something darker etched into the soil. Stop, Mercer said. He crouched. Drag marks. Wide, deep, and recent. The leaves had been pushed aside in a broad swathe leading from the rear door out toward the tree line. The soil was churned as if something heavy had been pulled, no, scraped along its length. Mark knelt beside him. That's not animal. Too straight. Object? Laura asked. Could be, he said, but whatever it wasn't clean. See here? He pointed to the gouges in the earth. Sharp edges. Like metal dragging through stone. No wheel tracks, though. Mercer followed the line with his torch. The trail vanished into the woods beyond the yard, swallowed by blackness. Control, this is P.C. Wilson, Laura said again. We've got unusual markings on the building and what appears to be a drag trail into the woods. No visual on suspects. Requesting further instruction. A pause. Then, received. Armed response remains en route. Hold position. Do not pursue. I repeat, do not enter the woods. Maintain visual contact only. Mark stood, brushing grit from his knee. Guess that's that. Mercer didn't move. Laura turned. Dan. He kept his torch on the tree line. The beam lit the first few trunks, slick with moss. Beyond that, nothing. I'm going after it. Laura stepped between him and the trail. No, you're not. You heard Control. He met her gaze. Something was here, something still out there. This isn't just some kids messing around. The boot, the marks, the movement in the tower. You felt it too. I felt the cold and a bit of unease. That's not grounds to breach protocol. Mark's tone was more careful now. Dan, look, I get it. You've been on edge since that thing in Hargreaves Field last month. But this isn't the way. Mercer's jaw tightened. You think I'm seeing things? No, Laura said quickly. I think you're rattled. And for good reason. But armed response is hours out. We go in, we're unarmed. If there's someone dangerous out there, we're just meat in high-vis. He turned the boot over in his hand again. Mud flaked off the sole. Something about the way it had been placed. Deliberate, almost staged. Laura watched him. Dan, don't. But he was already stepping past her. Control, this is P.C. Mercer, he said into his radio. I'm following the trail, solo. Will maintain radio contact. Negative, Mercer. Stand down. Repeat. Stand down immediately. You are not authorized to proceed. He clicked the radio off. Jesus, Mark muttered. Laura sighed. We follow at a distance. No point shouting him back now. They moved together across the yard and into the trees, torches lowered to avoid glare. The drag marks were clear at first. Broken branches, disturbed soil, a faint metallic smear along one rock. The woods were denser here, the air thick with old rot and damp. No birds, no rustle. Just the soft thud of boots and the occasional crack of a twig. Mercer's pulse thudded in his ears. He wasn't sure what he expected. A body? A person? Something worse? The trail turned sharply past a fallen tree and dipped into a hollow where the earth was darker, wetter. His torch caught on something pale in the underbrush. He froze. A bone, long, clean. No flesh, no gnaw marks. Just a single femur, bleached and half-buried in the mud. He heard Laura's breath catch behind him. Mark swore under his breath. "That's no deer." Mercer stepped forward, crouched, and looked again. The end was splintered, not cut, broken. Before he could speak, something moved in the trees ahead, not a rustle, not a step, a sound, a low, wet clicking, like someone trying to clear their throat underwater. Laura swung her torch around. "Who's there?" Silence. Then mimicry. A voice, his own, repeated back at him from the dark. "Police. Come out now." But it was wrong. Too slow. The syllables stretched, hollow. Mark raised his torch. What the hell was that? More rustling. Then a high, thin whistle, like someone trying to imitate a kettle. Mercer's breath clouded in the cold. "It's not alone." Laura's voice dropped. "We're pulling back, now." Another voice, this time hers. No heroics. Mocking. Drawn out. Echoed from somewhere just beyond the torchlight. They backed up slowly, torches held steady. The trees behind them closed in, branches clawing at their coats. The sound followed. Clicking, mimicry, laughter that wasn't laughter. Then it stopped. Dead silence. Mercer turned. The trail was gone. No marks, no drag line, just leaf litter and moss. Laura grabbed his sleeve. "We need to get back to the cars, now." He nodded, throat dry. As they retraced their steps, the woods behind them remained still. Too still. The child's boot felt heavy in his pocket. Into the clearing, the woods swallowed the beam of Mercer's torch like breath into a lung. Damp, cold, unseen. They moved quickly, but not so fast they couldn't listen. Every few steps, Laura paused, angling her light behind them. Mark kept muttering under his breath, but Mercer couldn't make out the words. Maybe prayers, maybe curses. 15 minutes later, they reached the edge of the ridge where the drag marks had first turned. No fresh signs, no return trail, no boot prints. Mercer scanned the undergrowth, but the forest had closed in behind them like water over a sinking stone. "We mark it here," Laura said, her voice clipped. "We log it, and we wait for armed response." Mark exhaled, shivering. "If they even send one." "They will," she said, but didn't sound sure. Mercer stepped away from them, just far enough to let their torches fade behind him. He stood under a leaning ash tree, the bark flaking like dry skin. The cold gnawed at his knuckles. He reached into his coat pocket and touched the child's boot. Small, faded pink. A bow stitched on the side. It felt obscene, something that should have been in evidence. Not in his jacket like a souvenir. He should have turned back. Instead, he moved deeper into the trees. "Mercer," Laura called, warning sharp. "I need 5 minutes," he said over his shoulder. "There's a pattern, something I missed." Mark cursed again, but Laura just sighed. "You've got 5, then we're calling it in. No debate." He nodded, already moving. The path had vanished hours ago, but the land sloped gently north, and he followed that, ducking branches and stepping over roots slick with moss. The silence deepened with every step. Not even the wind stirred. Then he saw it. A clearing opened ahead, moonlight catching on frost-laced leaves, the trees circling it like watchers. Mercer slowed, breath misting in front of him. The earth was disturbed here. Shallow furrows etched into the soil, looping and spiraling in crude, repetitive arcs. Not symbols, exactly. More like scratches done by something with no sense of shape, only obsession. He stepped into the clearing. The air was colder here. Still. Not the clean cold of winter, but something stale, like a cellar that hadn't been opened in years. At the center, half buried in the churned earth, was the bone. Not the one they had seen before. This was larger, a pelvis maybe, clean, white, and wrong. No animal should be that smooth. No weather should bleach it so completely. His torch flickered. He tapped it. The light steadied. Then he heard it. A creak, long and slow, like a wooden beam under strain. The sound of the mill's dead clock arm shifting, except it was here in the trees behind him. He turned. Nothing. Then laughter, high, childlike. Then flattening into something too wide, too long, like someone trying to remember what laughing was and getting it wrong. "Laura?" he called, knowing she wasn't close enough to answer. From the trees, a voice replied. "Laura," it said with a wet, dragging breath. "No, heroics." His mouth went dry. It stepped from the shadows, tall, wrongly tall. The body was bent, but the limbs hung too long. The head tilted at an unnatural angle, one shoulder jerking like it was dislocated. Its skin, or what remained of it, hung in patches, some pale, some gray. Bone showed through in places, not clean, but slick and glistening. The eyes caught his torchlight, not glowing, not red, just reflecting like glass marbles. Empty. It opened its mouth. "Police," it said. "Come out. Now." His voice, bent and broken. Mercer didn't shout, didn't shoot. He ran. He turned and plunged into the trees, breath sawing in his throat. Branches whipped at his face, tore at his coat. Behind him, the thing moved. He could hear it. Not footsteps, just sound. Creaks, clicks, imitated laughter. The squeal of rusted hinges. His torch beam jittered wildly. He didn't dare look back. The path, if there'd ever been one, vanished completely. He stumbled over a root, caught himself on a tree trunk slick with lichen, and kept going. The cold air burned his lungs. Something moved to his right, too fast. He veered left, crashing through underbrush, boots sinking into damp earth. Brambles tore at his trousers. A low branch slapped his face. Blood filled his mouth. He'd bitten his tongue. Ahead through the trees, a shape, a roofline. The shack. He didn't think, just ran. It was barely more than a lean-to. Weathered planks, a corrugated tin roof, and a door that hung slightly ajar. He hit it full force, slammed it shut, and threw his shoulder against it. Nothing behind him, yet. He scanned the interior. Dim light from the torch caught on piles of rusted tools, a cracked sink, and a wooden workbench with old tins of nails and oil. Dust hung thick in the air. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The smell was sharp, metal, damp, old blood. He dragged a workbench in front of the door, wedging it tight. Then he backed away, torch trembling in his grip. Silence. Then tap. Not at the door, at the window. He turned. A shape pressed against the glass, not a face, just a smear of flesh, a suggestion of eye, a jaw too long. It didn't try to break through. It mimicked the creak of the mill again. Then the sound of a door slamming. Then his own voice, whispered, "Help, help, help." He turned off the torch. Darkness swallowed the room. He crouched behind the bench, heart hammering. His fingers brushed against something under the table, a long case, metal clasps. He felt them, fumbled them open. Inside, a shotgun. Legal. Rural type. Locked away, but not well. He checked the chamber. One shell. Another in the case. He loaded both. Footsteps now, heavy, dragging. Outside the shack. The door shuddered once, then again. He braced it with his shoulder. The voice came again. "Mercer," it said almost gently. A child's voice. Then a woman's, then his own. "Come out." The door cracked. He aimed the shotgun. The handle turned. He fired. The blast lit the room in a white flare. The door splintered. Something shrieked, not human, not even close. He reloaded with shaking hands. Silence again. Then the dragging retreat. He waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. He opened the door slowly, shotgun raised. The clearing beyond was empty. But the ground was marked, scraped, smeared. Something had bled here. Not red, not black. Just dark. Unnatural. He stepped out, breath catching. The woods were still, not quiet. Still. He turned toward the sound of distant sirens. Control finally sending someone. The shotgun hung heavy in his hands. Behind him, the door creaked open again, slowly, as if pushed by breath. Ashbourne Mill, midnight patrol. Mercer turned fast, shotgun raised again, but the shack door only drifted wider on its rusted hinges, creaking faintly before settling. No figure behind it. No sound but the residual echo of his own pulse. He stepped back inside, breath held, shoulders taut. The air stank of the discharge, cordite and something older, meat sweet and wrong. Dust floated in the beam of his torch, now shakily relit. The shot had torn a jagged hole through the door and embedded deep into the frame beyond. No sign of the hollow inside, just splinters, scorch marks, and the faint, sticky trail leading outward. He followed it to the doorway again, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. He closed the door slowly, not because it offered any real protection, but out of instinct. A small, futile act of containment. He turned the bolt, then wedged the broken bench back across it. His hands worked automatically, but his mind lagged behind, thoughts fragmented. The shotgun trembled in his grip. He laid it on the workbench and sat heavily beside it, back against the wall, legs half buckled. The cold from the concrete floor soaked through his trousers. His breathing came in shallow draws, each one catching on the edge of something sharp inside him. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, though he didn't believe in anything anymore. The silence pressed in again, thicker now, not peaceful, just full. No birds, no wind. Even the insects seemed to have fled. He replayed the moment of the shot over and over. The way the door cracked. The snarl that wasn't a voice, but tried to be. That flicker of something almost human in the sound of his own name. And the recoil, harder than he expected. His shoulders still ached from it. But the thing had screamed. It had bled. That meant something, didn't it? He stood again, uneasy. Every muscle in his legs felt wrong, like someone else's. The shotgun felt heavier now, not just in weight, but consequence. Control would have questions. Hell, Laura would have questions. Mark would laugh it off until he saw Mercer's face and then go quiet, in that way he did when things got too real. He looked down at the blood, or whatever passed for it, that led away from the door. It was thick, oily, almost tar-like. It had soaked into the dirt and pine needles in a thick drag, suggesting the thing hadn't retreated smoothly. Wounded. Mercer swallowed, throat dry. He could leave now. Walk back to the car, wait for backup, file the report. Claim self-defense and let the system chew it up in paperwork. But part of him, some grim, compulsive part, needed to know it was gone. That it wouldn't circle back. That it wouldn't find someone else. Someone not carrying a shotgun and half a bottle of adrenaline. He flicked off the safety again, just in case. He stepped outside, boots crunching quietly over grit and twigs. The trail was easy to follow, branches bent, undergrowth flattened. The hollow had fled east, deeper into the trees toward the old quarry, if he had his bearings right. That area had been fenced years ago after a collapse, but no one really patrolled it. He moved slowly, torch off, letting the dim moonlight guide him. The shotgun stayed raised, barrel low but ready. Every shadow looked wrong. Every branch that moved seemed animate. His ears strained for sound, but the woods remained utterly mute. After 5 minutes, he reached the edge of a shallow dip in the forest floor. A pool of dark fluid shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Something had paused here. Collapsed, maybe. Scrapes on the bark of a nearby tree, deep and irregular, suggested flailing limbs. He crouched, touched the smear with gloved fingers. Still warm. He looked up sharply. A sound to his left. Soft. A breath? A shuffle? He rose, shotgun shouldered again. "Police," he said, voice low. "Armed. Don't move." Nothing. Then a whisper, barely audible. "Mercer." Not a voice. A recording of one. His own again. "Come out," he said, colder now. "Do it slow." Still nothing. Then behind him, a crunch. He spun just as a shape lunged from the brush. The hollow, half collapsed, one arm dragging uselessly, its side torn raw where the shotgun had struck. Flesh hung in flaps, and something glinted beneath. Bone? No. Something harder. Wrong. It shrieked again, but the sound cut short, garbled, like a radio catching static mid-sentence. Mercer fired. The blast knocked the thing back, but it didn't fall. It staggered, hissed, and vanished into the undergrowth with a thrashing, desperate speed. He reloaded. Last shell. His hands moved without thought. No, not panic, just procedure. He didn't pursue. Not this time. Not into that dark. Instead, he backed away, step by step, until the shack came into view again. He reached it, closed the door behind him, and this time bolted it with more purpose. He sat. Not collapsed, not trembling, just sat. The second shot had hit. He'd seen the spray of dark matter, heard the sound, but it hadn't stopped. He looked down at the shotgun. Empty now. He should have waited for backup. Should have radioed in. Should have followed protocol. But protocol didn't cover this. The radio on his belt crackled suddenly. He jumped, heart thudding. "PC Mercer, come in." "This is Control. We have a unit en route to your location. ETA 5 minutes. Please respond." He fumbled for the unit, thumbed aside. "This is Mercer," he said. His voice sounded wrecked. "I'm secure. Situation contained." A pause. "Understood, PC Mercer. Remain at location. Armed response will liaise on arrival." He clipped the radio back on, stared at the floor. Contained. That was a lie. It wasn't contained. It had retreated. That was all. And now it knew his face, his name, his voice. He stood, checked the door again out of habit. The clearing beyond remained still, but not safe. He flicked off the torch and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then another. A light flickered through the trees. Headlamps. He stepped outside slowly, shotgun held upright, barrel skyward in the neutral position. The first responder emerged from the undergrowth, torch beam sweeping. "Mercer?" "Here." "Jesus, you all right?" "No." The officer approached, cautious. Another followed, weapon drawn but lowered. Their uniforms marked them as armed response. "Shot fired?" "Yes, twice." "Creature fled that way, wounded." "Creature?" Mercer didn't reply. The man looked at the shotgun, then at Mercer's face. "We'll sweep. You sit. Medics on the way." Mercer nodded. He stepped back into the shack and sat again by the wall, the shotgun resting across his knees. Outside, voices rose, orders, movement, the clatter of gear. But in the quiet between, he still heard it. The creak of the mill, the whisper of his name, and somewhere, far off, the sound of something dragging itself through wet leaves. Not gone. Just waiting. Ashbourne Mill, midnight patrol. The official report read like a damp cloth wrung dry, facts squeezed out, the rest left unsaid. PC Daniel Mercer sat at the narrow desk in the station's back office, the shotgun already bagged and tagged by forensics. The scratch on his cheek had crusted over, and his uniform still smelled faintly of the shack, stale oil, damp timber, and something darker he couldn't name. He typed slowly, methodically. Attended suspected disturbance at Ashbourne Mill. Initial signs of forced entry and possible trespass. Upon further inspection, encountered unknown hostile entity. Discharged firearm in immediate self-defense. No confirmed fatality. Suspect fled into woods. Request further investigation. Control would chew on that for days. The phrases were careful. Unknown entity, hostile, self-defense. All palatable enough for the review board to process without choking. He left out the mimicry. The way it had hissed his name. The way it had moved like something remembering how to be human. Outside the office window, early light crept across the Delbridge rooftops. A milk float whined down the high street. The world ticked forward. Mark Grant leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Heard they're sending up someone from the county. Armed response liaison. Sniffer dogs, too, maybe. Mercer didn't look up. Right. Apparently it's anomalous wildlife now, that's the line. Mercer clicked save. That'll play well with the parish council, Mark huffed. Better than officer loses it in woods, shoots tree stump. Laura Wilson appeared behind him holding 2 mugs. Strong tea, no sugar. You look like someone who's just remembered where he buried the body. Mercer took the mug, nodded his thanks. His hands were still shaking, though he tried to hide it. Laura leaned on the filing cabinet. They've logged it as a Category 2 incident. That means an internal review and a temporary suspension of solo patrols. You'll be paired up for a bit. Good. She hesitated. You all right, Dan? He didn't answer immediately. He stared at the screen, at the blinking cursor beneath his report. I keep hearing it, he said quietly. When it moved, it scraped like a door hinge, like a gate left swinging in the wind. Laura didn't speak. Mark shifted his weight, but said nothing either. Mercer stood, took a breath, and walked to the evidence board in the main room. Among the faded notices, missing pets, community feats, a 10-year-old photo of a runaway teen, someone had pinned a fresh sheet, a printed aerial shot of Ashbourne Mill and its surrounding woodland, with red circles marking the shack, the trail, the drag marks. A sticky note in Control's handwriting was stuck to the corner. Awaiting Wildlife Agency assessment. Recommend patrols avoid area until cleared. Mercer stared at the map. It wasn't wildlife. Laura stepped beside him. We know. Mark scratched his jaw. They'll do the dance. Log it, fence it, forget it. And when it comes back? Mark met his eyes. Then we do the dance again. The next few days passed like silt in a stream. Slow, thick, directionless. Mercer returned to patrol, always paired now, always under quiet watch. He didn't mind. The streets were the same hedgerows, the same stone cottages, the same pub windows, throwing warm light across the lane. But something had shifted. The silence was heavier now. Each night, as they drove past the mill, he looked out the window. The clock still read 1 minute past midnight. The same frozen hands, the same sagging roofline against the trees. But sometimes, just sometimes, he thought he saw a shape in the upper window. Not moving, not watching, just waiting. Laura noticed once. You keep looking up there. It's watching, he said before he could stop himself. She didn't reply, just kept driving. Gossip swirled as it always did. Mrs. Hargreaves from the bakery told a customer she'd heard howling from the woods. A teenager claimed they'd seen a pale face behind the mill's broken shutters. A man in the pub muttered about something in the old Delbridge quarry, too. It was always like that. Stories layered like wet leaves, truth rotting somewhere underneath. Control circulated a memo. No further sightings. Incident remains under review. No cause for public alarm. Mercer printed it, pinned it to the board, and stared at it for a long time. His dreams grew strange, not nightmares exactly, just the sense of being followed, of something just behind him, always out of sight, breathing in time with him. In one, he stood at the mill gate, and the building leaned toward him as if listening. Sometimes he woke with the taste of dirt in his mouth. One night, 2 weeks later, he and Laura were parked up near the allotments, nursing lukewarm tea and listening to rain patter on the roof. The radio crackled with idle chatter. Lost dog, suspicious vehicle, a noise complaint in Bridge End. Laura turned to him. "Do you think it'll come back?" Mercer didn't answer at first, then, "I think it never left." She nodded slowly. "You ever think about quitting?" He thought about the shack, about the shotgun bucking in his hands, about the thing's face, or lack of one. The way it had worn sounds like skin. "I think about what happens if I do," he said. They fell quiet. Later, as they passed the mill again, Mercer turned his head. Nothing in the windows this time. Just the dark. But the hairs on his arms stood up anyway. "Dan," Laura said, not looking at him, "you did the right thing. You kept someone else from finding it first." He didn't answer. He wasn't sure he believed her, or himself. The next day, he walked the footpath behind the station alone, under the pretense of checking a broken fence. It led toward the woods where the trail had started. The ground was muddy and slick, the brambles thick with old rain. He paused at the edge of the tree line, listening. No birds, no wind, just the faint creak, like a door shifting in its frame. He turned back. The review came and went. The firearm use was deemed justified under immediate threat. A warning was issued about deviation from patrol protocol. The shack was sealed, the shotgun confiscated. Ashbourne Mill was placed on the low-priority asset watch list, whatever that meant. Life resumed its shape, on the surface. But Mercer knew better. Sometimes, when he locked the station for the night, he'd pause before switching off the lights, just to listen, to make sure it wasn't there behind the door or the desk or inside the hum of the kettle, waiting. The next patrol started at midnight sharp. Rain slicked the tarmac. The hedgerows dripped. As they pulled out of the car park, Laura flicked on the headlights. "Same route?" "Yeah." They passed the pub, the bakery, the old-school gate, then the mill. Mercer didn't look this time. He just kept his eyes on the road. But he felt it, like breath on the back of his neck, still out there, still learning and still